So we're going to talk about our top 5 favorite movies each. Mostly because if you're going to listen to this ever, you might want to know kind of like what our subjective opinions are on movies and like general, overview of what our tastes are like. First, Sam is going to go and he's going to talk about his top 5 favorite movies. Just for the record, too, this is January 1. This is the first day of the year.
2024.
So this may change over time.
These lists are fluid.
Yeah, exactly.
We will be changing these throughout the years, potentially, but
a lot of years have stayed the same.
Yeah, my number 1's pretty much been the same since I've been a kid, and then my top 3 have been pretty much the same for a while now, and then we'll get to the 4th and 5th movies, but I'm going to start with number 1 because this movie is Return of the Jedi.
No surprises.
Star Wars. Number 6. Star Wars just hit it for me when I was a kid. I grew up in a really weird time for like pop culture because it was the early 90s, so there was no like MCU, there was no Harry Potter, there was no Lord of the Rings, there was really just Nintendo 64 and, whatever cartoon TV show you'd watch. So when I was a kid, Star Wars was like past its prime kind of, but they basically came out with the original VHS in 1995 with none of the re-edits that George Lucas did in 97. So me and my brother grew up on that VHS set of the original trilogy, and that was like the primary thing we would rewatch over and over again.
Is that the one with their faces, like part of their faces?
Yeah, we have it. It's the Darth Vader, Yoda, and the Stormtrooper.
Yeah, I think it's a Stormtrooper.
Yeah, so I like all those movies, obviously, and
Return of the Jedi is not the collective favorite, is it?
No. So most people like all 3. Most people would say the second one, Empire Strikes Back, is the best film, but obviously the first one revolutionized the industry in 1977, so depending on what age you are, so you might say you like the first one overall better. Return of the Jedi, I can definitely go through it in more detail about why most people don't think it's as good as those other ones, but I'm gonna use this time to praise Return of the Jedi because everything about this movie was just like exactly how I wanted the story to end, and I'm a big story person. I need the story to be at least pretty good for me to like the movie in general, and so for this to be a trilogy of 3 movies, which at the time never really been done before, where it's a 3-movie finite complete story arc, and obviously there's been tons of Star Wars since, but at the time, Return of the Jedi was the last thing that Star Wars was, and it ended the story, and, it obviously uses a lot of the elements from the first 2 movies, and even, the second Death Star, which is a ripoff of the first Death Star, but just the space battle is incredible, everything with Luke versus Vader at the end, the lightsaber fight, the dialogue back and forth is great. I was really into the, construction of, Jabba the Hutt and all the different creatures on Tatooine from the first act of the movie.
Like the practical effects?
Yeah, okay. Just the creation of the different alien design. Like the Rancor, that thing,
Not the Sarlacc.
Well, that too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that thing. And we're not talking about the redo version. That's the Sarlacc. That's not what we're talking about.
I prefer the OG version without the beak.
Yeah. Every time I see that, it's so jarring.
Yeah, and then there's a part with Boba Fett that they changed, I think, at that point. I don't remember, but like, yeah, I prefer the beakless Sarlacc, but the Rancor is really cool. Like, all the different aliens at Jabba's palace are cool. The fact that they, reutilize Tatooine to not only just be, another location on the planet, but that they would have like a gangster underground, like society of like tomfoolery or whatever you want to call it with Jabba the Hutt. And the whole part with Princess Leia and Han Solo, like him getting out of the carbonite and he's blind for a while.
It's just good, like, storytelling.
Yeah, like I really like how they ended the three movies, and it was my introduction to cinema, really, because that was like the only movies I would watch were those three movies for the longest time. And all the space stuff at the end is really great. The Emperor's awesome. I really like the Ewoks, even though I wish they were the Wookiees, which was the original idea for the film, until they realized it would cost too much to have 7-foot Wookiees costumes walking around. It's easier to have little bear costumes. But yeah, it's always a movie I return to, and it's probably always going to be my favorite movie, even though you can nitpick certain parts of it, but
it's your personal favorite.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 2 favorite movie of all time is The Apartment by Billy Wilder, 1960, Best Picture winner. This is the movie of Jordan and I's relationship. I think the first time we watched this was like 2017.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is going to be in your top 5 as well, so you're going to want to talk about this a little bit more. Just all around, what a great script, especially for the time. Really great performances. Just a feel-good movie. Great Christmas and New Year's Eve movie. One of the last great black and white movies, at least from an American perspective. I know they were still making a lot of black and white movies in Europe in the 60s, but
yeah,
for the most part, I think it was like the early 60s when they really started to really only make color movies in America. But anyway.
But this was late, right?
This is 1960.
This is like a late black and white.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's interesting that they kind of chose black and white.
But then the Blu-ray we have has like the colorized movie poster that looks really bad.
Horrible. Demonic. I don't like that. It's my least favorite thing. If it was in black and white, it was in black and white for a reason.
I really like the score. There's so many, like, I'm a big, like, guy. I'm a big, like,
I'm a big guy.
Yeah. I'm a big, like, 2-second dialogue guy where it's, like, a few words or one word, and it's just how the person says it or the context of it. There's so many, like, there's so many of those in this movie. I really like the neighbor doctor. He's really funny.
Yeah.
I know we'll talk more about it when you go through your top 5, spoiler alert, but I mean it is like a great romantic movie that we pretty much have seen like 5+ times since a few years ago. So my number 3 favorite film is Persona by Ingmar Bergman, 1966.
Same year as The Apartment?
6 years later.
Oh.
So if you don't know Ingmar Bergman, he's a Swedish film director. Mostly has a lot of films from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, a few from the 70s. This is really like a 2-person performance by B.B. Anderson and Liv Ullmann. Well, B.B. Anderson plays a nurse, and Liv Ullmann plays a actress gone mute and is under the care of this nurse. And it's a very weird movie that a lot of people might not like at times, but it's if you just go into it looking for the performances and just the certain shots of how the cinematography and the lighting and the use of shadows and the blending of imagery within their own two faces and multiple different shots, and how both characters eventually start to blend together, and ultimately you question, there's a lot of unanswered questions about who's who, what each one of them is thinking or trying to accomplish. And even if you don't like some of the context of what's happening at different parts, it's still really beautiful to look at.
You've seen like a lot of Ingmar Bergman movies. You haven't seen all of his movies, right?
No, I haven't. I definitely haven't seen all. There's like 40 plus,
Oh,
depending on what you consider feature length or what. But yeah, I think Criterion has an Ingmar Bergman collection of like 30 something films for like $400 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I've seen, 5 or 6. This is definitely my favorite. It's only 83 minutes. So it's like very short, and it's really like every shot is so interesting to look at and cool. So as the movie goes on, it's like, okay, you're just slowly like accumulate all these different imagery in your head about these two characters. And I think it's one of those where, like, I think even if you don't like it, you're still going to be thinking about it for a day or two. Just be like, what was that? What
did this
what
part
was it
mean?
trying to say? I mean, it's not as deep or as intricate as some of David Lynch's films, but I think it's more like a...
This is like David Lynch's influence, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't Ingmar Bergman like one of the first surrealists? I mean, I know that foreign films in general, even back then, because like you said, the 40s, 50s, 60s weren't like as experimental as, stuff now can be and is widely accepted.
Yeah,
but,
I'm just saying more like this Persona's more of a straightforward plot line of it's two women, one's a nurse, one's the patient. They go to a secluded island to take care of the patient, and they're there for a number of days, and that's pretty much it. And like there's a lot of discussion you can have with a lot of the imagery, like I've said, but like there's not like multiple different timelines or like 7 different characters that you have to like figure out what they mean, like a David Lynch movie. I feel like even like Mulholland Drive, which gets a lot of stuff from this movie, Mulholland Drive has like a lot of different other elements. And so I think again at 83 minutes, it's a quick watch, and I just think it's pretty crazy even for now, like 60 years later. Okay, my number 4 favorite movie is Hot Rod from 2007. This is the first movie by the Lonely Island guys, Andy Samberg, Jorma Taccone, and Akiva Schaffer, who is the director. This was produced by Lorne Michaels, Seth Meyers, Will Ferrell. This was like the first movie once they got on SNL and they started doing the digital shorts. Very similar to Please Don't Destroy, and they just came out with Foggy Mountain in 2023. this is like 16 years earlier version of that. But this is actually like, I think, a masterpiece in comedy.
It holds up.
It definitely holds up. It's very physical humor, and like there's a lot of comedies in the mid 2000s that are obviously raunchy or, past their expiration date as far as comedy has gone, whether you like that or not. But Hot Rod, I feel like there's definitely some cringe elements to this movie. Basically, Andy Samberg plays this character, Rod Kimball, who is a wannabe stuntman, and rides this little, I don't know if you want to call it motorcycle or a little.
Isn't it like a?
It's like a little moped bike thing. Yeah. It's really funny. He basically has this stepfather who's played by Ian McShane, which, whenever we do our top 5 best performances ever, Ian McShane will be in my top 5 for this movie, because I think if he's not in this movie, this is not as good of a movie, simply because of how he plays the stepfather character. And he's an actual, like, English actor, like, he's done a ton of work. So, like, to have him in this movie as almost like an Anthony Hopkins light, playing this guy who's basically just on the couch the whole time and then ultimately fights his stepson in 2 scenes. But
yeah,
a really funny performance by Will Arnett as the boyfriend to Isla Fisher, who is Isla Fisher is the neighbor and former childhood friend to Andy Samberg's character. Danny McBride's in this, so he's really funny. He has that really funny line, "Pools are perfect for holding water."
It's also short, isn't it?
Yeah, 88 minutes. That's another short movie.
This is so similar to Persona in that.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, he's basically trying to help his stepfather live so he can beat him up and get his respect. So his stepfather has a heart attack or needs a heart transplant, and the surgery costs $50,000. And Andy Samberg has to either help get that money, or because of the American medical system, his stepfather just has to die because he doesn't have $50,000. Like, there's so many good movies where it's just like, oh, the American healthcare system has failed yet another human. That's the movie. This is another one of that long list. Another great one is Denzel Washington and John Q, where his son is like playing a baseball game and has like a heart attack or something and has to have like a $200,000 surgery and he can't afford it. So they're like, sorry. Anyway. But Hot Rod, he has to like help get money for his father's surgery, and there's just like a lot of jokes. So like if it doesn't hit, like wait 10 seconds and there's another joke. And like even if it hits like 20% for you, it's still pretty funny. And like there's so many little rewatchable parts, and it's only PG-13 because they say the F word one time, and I don't think there's any nudity. I think maybe someone shows her butt, but
what movie doesn't have someone showing their butt?
Yeah, well, but yeah, there's a lot of jokes per minute, so I think if you can just buy into the story for like 80 minutes, you're going to have a lot of laughs. And there's like a lot of different types of jokes. So like there's parody where he like mocks the Kevin Bacon Footloose punching dance scene in Footloose. And he's like dancing in the woods. It's really funny. Again, there's a ton of physical humor because he's a stuntman. So there's a lot of parts where he's like getting hurt. There's like a lot of absurdist humor with a lot of the dialogue. And there's a lot of anti-humor where it's like again, it's a lot of like Nathan Fielder or Tim Robinson-esque comedy where it's like even if you don't think it's funny or you don't laugh at what you're actually being presented, it can be still viewed as like so like ridiculous or dumb or not what you were expecting that it's still
You have
like
to give it credit.
kind of like oh you're gonna chuckle for half a second. Like again, there's not a lot of comedies nowadays, and I know this time period there was a ton of comedies, and this is one of them, but I think this is one of the, I think objectively the best, and objectively definitely the best PG-13 comedy uh, of that time period. Okay, so my fifth favorite movie of all time is New Jack City from Mario Van Peebles' 1991. This is starring Wesley Snipes and Ice-T with Chris Rock and a lot of great side characters. Basically, this is basically set, I think it's like late 80s into the present day of 91, where it's in New York. But Wesley Snipes, his character, is kind of running a drug gang, and they have basically a new form of crack, more or less, that they're distributing to the community, and they buy up this apartment complex and make it like a kind of like a drug headquarters of they like manufacture the drug in the house or in the apartment complex. They sell it to all the residents, and if you don't use it as a resident, they kick you out or they might kill you, type of thing. So he's kind of like terrorizing this area of New York City, and he's rich, and he's got a lot of guys with him, and they have so many funny moments in the car and playing basketball. But Ice-T's character, he's an undercover cop, and so he's trying to get a part of this drug gang under Wesley Snipes, and he soon becomes a drug dealer himself. And at what point do you draw the line of being a cop and being the criminal? I like that a lot of movies, like Deep Cover does that too. And really a good Chris Rock performance. Like his character's really the heart of the movie because he's an actual drug user in the movie. And he has to like get clean to like start working for Wesley Snipes, and then ultimately he works for Ice-T's character for the cops to like get out of jail basically. And so but then he ultimately like has to decide if he's going to keep doing it or what he's like. So like there's a different element to it because like obviously Wesley Snipes and Ice-T aren't really doing the drugs and like getting high off it. So they're just like going after the economics of it all. But yeah, great soundtrack. They have like their own theme song. Like there's just like a part where they just start singing a cappella on the side of the street. There's a moment where...
Is it actually them doing the acapella?
Not Ice-T and Wesley Snipes.
Wow, that's a shame.
No. There's a moment where Vanessa Williams' character, Keisha, shoots someone in the head and says, "Rockabye, baby." Which is iconic. There's a lot of other great lines, and I really like their Kangol hats and the sunglasses and just the aesthetics of it and how it's shot. And there's a lot of good shootout scenes. And it's just one of those ultimate vibe movies to just like watch on the couch and just listen to it and like absorb the vibes of what's coming out of the screen kind of movies. So that was my top 5 favorite movies.